Welcome back, everyone, to Political Connections. Today, Florida Congresswoman Laurel introduced the Ready Account Act, which will provide a tax-free savings account for home mitigation and disaster response costs. This will help people who experience losses due to the hurricanes. So we want to bring her back now and welcome Congresswoman Laurel as she joins us once again. Great to see you again. Welcome back.
Great to see you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We're going to get into disaster relief, very important topic for all the obvious reasons in Florida right now. But first, it's been a super busy news day, and I wanted to get your thoughts. I know you had a chance to watch a little bit of Pam Bondi's confirmation. This is on the Senate side of things, but just as a fellow Floridian who I know knows Pam very well, what were your thoughts on her confirmation process today?
She did an outstanding job. Not surprisingly, Pam, as a career prosecutor, as our state's former attorney general, was really exceptionally good at sticking to the Constitution, her commitment to the rule of law, her commitment to ensuring that the Department of Justice is fair and impartial, and that she, as the Attorney General, would be a representative for all of the American people. So she did a phenomenal job answering questions. I think she impressed senators from both sides of the aisle, and really her experience as our Attorney General really shined through. America is going to benefit from our great Florida leaders.
One of those Florida leaders, also Marco Rubio, he had his confirmation hearings as well today. I know you were in committee hearings during that, but he seems to have some bipartisan support. It looks like he's well on his way to being confirmed. Let's go back to talking about the topic now that is so pressing for Floridians from this horrible storm season that we've been through. You would like to study or take a look at or find ways to cut through the red tape. And people who are going through that process know exactly what that means. All the bureaucracy to get the relief that they need. What are you hoping to do with this?
That's right. So I've filed what we call the Ready Act, and this is a strong bipartisan bill that would allow Americans to create a spending account that operates much like a health savings account so that they could have tax benefit when they invest in prevention methods, bolstering, strengthening, building the resilience of their home, and also disaster recovery. So in Congress, what we're seeing across America are people who have been devastated by natural disasters. And so we are working hard to come up with new and additional ways that we can help Americans prepare for severe weather and also recover in the aftermath when these types of events happen. I know we're also very acutely aware in our region, it was a very damaging storm season for us this past year. And we still have so many friends and neighbors who are rebuilding, who lost their homes, who are still going through that process. So part of our role in Congress, too, is to ensure that FEMA is operating as it should and that those who have been affected by disasters are getting the support and relief that exists.
A few weeks ago, I talked with your colleague, Congressman Byron Donalds, on this very topic and how to, better respond and to streamline FEMA. And he said one thing that he would like to see at least discussed or looked at is potentially making FEMA a standalone agency, not under the umbrella of Homeland Security. Is that a topic that might gain any traction?
I do think it's something that we should discuss. One of the things that would help would be for us to have really an open dialogue about all of the ways in which we can improve the service delivery by FEMA. We've all heard from our constituents in Florida about the things that didn't work, about forms that are difficult to fill out, an administrative process that's burdensome. I know my office has helped hundreds of constituents who have struggled just to get through the submission of an application to FEMA. So there's a lot that we can do to reduce the level of bureaucracy and make FEMA more accessible, more user-friendly, to make it a process that is helpful and as smooth as it can be in the wake of a disaster. So I think looking at where FEMA is housed, or where the oversight of FEMA is, all of that is an important part of ensuring that we are helping that agency reach its fullest potential. And a lot of sometimes what we need to think about is where are things housed and where is that structure? What department are they in? I know that's a similar conversation to one that we had about Secret Service also this year. Should it remain at the Department of Homeland Security, or would it help for it to be housed somewhere else too. So I know there are a lot of us here, Representative Donalds and I included, who very much want to have that conversation.
And then you have the funding piece, always crucial to get FEMA funding back in place to help out all over the country where these disasters have happened. We've got the fires in California, and it was just a few days ago that House Speaker Mike Johnson seemed to suggest tying disaster recovery aid. Now, he was being asked, I think, specifically about the fires, him tying some conditions to that, perhaps the debt ceiling. How do you feel about that, putting conditions on the potential for disaster aid?
Well, it certainly is essential that we continue to support people who are affected by disasters. But I also think it's incumbent upon us, as with any federal spending, to ensure that there's some safeguards in place, that those dollars, that those benefits are actually getting into the hands of the people who need our help. So having some safeguards in place to ensure that FEMA funds are being spent on Americans who have had who've had a disaster, who are suffering, who should be the ones receiving FEMA aid. I think that's entirely appropriate. I'm glad that Speaker Johnson is thinking about that and that we'll be considering that as part of any aid. Recently, the current director of FEMA indicated that right now they have adequate money in their reserves to be doing the immediate disaster response. But one thing that will happen in the months to come is California will be able to give us some data and some insight about the extent and scope of the damage. And then at that point, we can start looking at what is an appropriate federal response and what kind of backstop does FEMA need to continue doing its job. And of course, we mustn't forget, we still have many, many, many residents of North Carolina and Florida who still very much need help. And they need to be part of the conversation as well. Absolutely.
Some of that temporary housing running out in North Carolina, in the mountains right in the middle of winter. They are still very much going through it, as are we. Finally, have just enough time to ask you, there will be a new FEMA director. This administration will want its own FEMA director coming in. We've heard Florida Emergency Management Director Kevin Guthrie's name tossed around as a possibility. What does FEMA need in a director? What are the qualifications? What are the qualities? What would you like to see in a new FEMA director?
Well, there's some real wisdom to that, because if Florida knows how to prepare for and recover in the wake of disasters. So the most important thing to me would be somebody who is experienced, who's knowledgeable, who understands the logistics and preparation that are required in advance of a storm. And we see the difference when Florida unfortunately goes through these events. We know we have assets and resources in place. We know how to get ready. We know what to do after the fact. We need a FEMA director on the national level who brings that kind of knowledge and experience and is going to make sure that the resources we have are going to Americans. And then, of course, somebody who will ensure that that is being done in a way that is fair, that is just, that is without any sort of political bias.
Representative Laurel, always great to talk with you. Thanks for your time.
You too. Great to see you.